Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today. We do have people online. We were a little bit concerned about attendance given a 9 o'clock start, so thank you very much for those that are here. And welcome to today's session on decarbonising energy supply in humanitarian responses, improving reliability, reducing emissions and saving costs. The goal of today's event is to raise awareness of actionable steps to decarbonise humanitarian energy and build partnerships to drive this transition. During today's sessions, we have Sylvia Motard, Deputy Director of UNEP's European Office, online, Alexandra Kapler, Programme Manager and Deputy Head of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation's Construction Expert Group. We will also have panellists from UNHCR, WFP, NORCAP and NRC, moderated by a senior energy expert from NORCAP deployed to IOM. We're also very grateful for Charles Kelly from the Global Shelter Cluster Environmental Community Practice to give a summary of the event and closing remarks. But before I hand over to the first speaker, let me introduce myself and the GPA. My name is Mark Gibson. I'm the team lead for the Global Platform for Action on Sustainable Energy in Displacement Settings, also known as the GPA for short. You really don't want to hear from me. So simply put, the GPA is seeking to deliver SDG 7, energy access for all, in displacement settings to local communities as well. So we are looking at clean cooking, energy access, and decarbonising the humanitarian response. And that brings us nicely on today's topic. So I would like to welcome online Sylvia Motard, Deputy Director of UNEP's European Office, to speak. Thank you. Sylvie, are you there?
Yes. Do you hear me well?
We can. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mark. And it's really my honor and privilege. And I thank you, Humanitarian and the GPA, for the opportunity to open this session. I'm very pleased not to be with you. Unfortunately, I had a little accident 2 days ago, and I cannot move my feet. But with apologies not to be with you physically, I'm very happy nevertheless to be part of this session. As you said, we are here today because we share the understanding that environmental action is fundamental to effective humanitarian action. Environmental challenges are frequently contributing factors in humanitarian crisis, and these same crises can then impact the environment and in turn then exacerbates risk and the vulnerability of those in needs. UNEP, through the Sustainable UN Facility, has the pleasure to work with, support and learn from our colleagues present here today. We recognize and commend the commitment and efforts made by our UN family and those working in the humanitarian sector to improve environmental sustainability through decarbonisation, among other means. In fact, as you probably know, the UN organizations present here today account for 60% of the UN globally reported greenhouse gas emissions, as put in the last Greening the Blue report. This is perhaps not too surprising, as in most humanitarian settings, electricity generation relies heavily on fossil fuels. This contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emission, impacts air quality, and the risk and cost that come along with long supply lines. The triple planetary crisis of climate, nature, and pollution brings the urgent need to decarbonize and reduce our impacts. This highlights how closely linked our agendas are: environmental, humanitarian, and development, as it is so clearly expressed in the Sustainable Development Goals. The UN remains strongly committed to reducing not just our greenhouse gases, but other environmental impacts of our facilities and operations. It is reflected in the Strategy for Sustainability Management in the UN system 2020-2030, endorsed by heads of agencies. Our commitment to environmental sustainability, to improving how the UN manages our facilities, are clear outcomes in the common approaches on biodiversity and a pollution-free planet. It is also well reflected in a recent effort when, with a UNITAR Global Platform for Action, we launched the Interagency Task Team on Decarbonisation. Our colleagues with the REACT project have strong success improving the environmental performance of peacekeeping and special political missions. They speak of leaving a positive legacy, an excellent reminder that any effort we take to improve the efficiencies of our operations are truly efforts to help those who we are serving and the environment in where we are. When done with proper foresight, actions taken today to decarbonize in the field will have lasting benefit for the host communities. The benefits are not only environmental. Decarbonization can also build local capacity, create jobs. In some situations, the renewable energy can power not just our own operation, but the community as well. This provides long-term benefits to job development and the environment. As a final reflection, I'm reminded of a statement made by Secretary General Antonio Guterres this past January. He called for us to work even harder to phase out fossil fuels quickly and fairly. I imagine he had in mind efforts like those that will be discussed during today's meeting. And I would like to thank you all for rising to this challenge, and I wish you a very great success in your meeting today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sylvie, for those opening remarks. Unfortunately, Alexandra is indisposed at this moment in time, so I'd like to pass on to Yanel to do some scene setting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you all for being here, and we are really excited for this session. Looking forward for a fruitful discussion and meaningful outcomes. So with this, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Yanal Madanat, and I work with the GPA as the decarbonization lead amongst the coordination unit team. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Today, why we are here. So as Mark just opened the session, mentioning the title of this session itself, so we wanted to set the scene for it and to go forward. So what is the need that we are discussing here? Basically, a recent study that the GPA conducted within 5 major UN agencies, including ICRC, showed that they operate over 11,000 diesel generators in their operations and spending over $100 million on maintaining those and for fuel cost as well. With this, they are all emitting more than almost 200,000 tons per year of CO2. Over 64% of all who are without electricity lives in fragile contexts where conflict and violence are in their areas. We know that, and this number adds up to more than 400 million people unlikely to be served by the private sector. Hence, multiple UN agencies, partners, NGOs have their own initiatives on decarbonization and solarization to provide clean energy supply to their contexts. We think, but also we hope, that we can accelerate all of those initiatives by working together. Today, we are discussing several topics, which could be interesting for all of you here, and thank you for being here. One of the topics that we're discussing, first of all, we want to see and hear some updates from our partners and the panelists that are seated here. Some updates about the decarbonization of energy supply for the humanitarian contexts, and the progress, the challenges, and the emerging needs. We know that there are some innovative financing mechanisms out there as well, finding solutions within the UN agencies and the NGOs. Technical expertise and its impact on moving forward with decarbonization, the application of energy efficiency measures, and operational cost savings. With this, I give the floor to my colleague Adam Senior Energy Expert at IOM, to moderate this session. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you very much, Yanel, and pleasure to be here with all of you today as well. My name is Adam Ostaszewski. I am a Senior Energy Expert at IOM, but actually deployed from NORCAP to the Environmental Sustainability Unit based in Geneva, HQ. We have a great panel today that I think can really shed light on this topic. And so let's dive into the session. Each panelist will have a chance to introduce themselves briefly. So I'll just say that we have with us Camilla Fullen to my left. She's the head of Energy and Sustainable Responses at NORCAP. Next to Camilla, we have Dominic Grace, who is the Deputy Director for the Division for Financial and Administrative Management at UNHCR. And next to Dominic, we have Julie Gassien, who is the Global Lead for Climate and Environment at NRC. Also, finally, we have with us online, I believe connected, Borja Gomez Rojo, who is the Energy Efficiency Program Manager at WFP. So let's kick things off. And I'd like to ask each panelist to please introduce your work on decarbonizing the energy supply of humanitarian energies. Tell us a little bit about what's been achieved so far, what have been the biggest challenges that you faced, and what are the most pressing needs currently that you see? So maybe, Camilla, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, it's a great pleasure to be here today representing the Energy and Environment team in NORCAP. For those of you that don't know us, NORCAP is a part of NRC. I wanted to start to say a few words with regards to NORCAP Energy and Environment in general. So since our inception in 2018, where we started with energy expertise, we were working with one partner agency and we had one energy expert. We have now grown our pool of energy expertise to become the largest pool of humanitarian energy expertise in the world today. So we have currently more than 80 energy experts on our pool, out of which 50 are currently on assignment right now. So our work is organized across 3 pillars. So we work on enabling access for refugees and displaced populations. Then the second pillar is decarbonizing humanitarian operations. And the third pillar is coordination of the sector, where we work very closely with the GPA. And the way NORCAP works, because we don't implement directly, we work in partnerships. So it's really great to be on this panel with some very good partners right here. So we support our partners' work in the energy access, decarbonization, and also the coordination, and support the partners' work by providing the humanitarian energy expertise and also working on solutions development to advance the sector. So right now we have collaborations ongoing with 12 partner agencies like UNHCR, World Food Programme, IOM, but also international NGOs, of course NRC, but also Mercy Corps and others. So currently we also have a presence across 25 countries in Africa, but also in Ukraine, Gaza, and soon we're also expanding our activities in the Middle East. So moving on to decarbonization specifically, one of the key priorities for NORCAP in 2025, as it has been also in previous years, is to continue the work in supporting and improving capacity and ability of NORCAP partners to design and implement decarbonization projects, as well as supporting systematic change within the organizations, but also the sector as a whole. So in 2024, decarbonization, well, we're just analyzing the data, so these are preliminary numbers, but Decarbonisation emerged as a top focus area of our experts, with nearly 90% of all our assignments supporting decarbonisation as the priority area, surpassing actually clean cooking. That was the top priority last year. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of examples with regards to our work. So I think one example from 2024 was our joint work with NRC, where we supported a full or partial transition of 6 NRC field and country offices from the use of diesel generators to solar energy in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Nigeria. And this equates to approximately 150 kilowatts of installed solar power. Another example I wanted to highlight was our support to, or our role in supporting UNHCR's Greening the Blue initiatives. Over the past 3 years, several energy experts have been assigned and contributed with expertise in key areas such as the green box installation, energy auditing, vendor selection, and systems installation and implementation. So that through that work, there has been great impacts across 9 countries, including Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Somalia, Chad, Mauritania, Niger, and South Sudan. So I think, through this, highlighting these collaborations, we can show, how providing targeted expertise can drive meaningful progress in decarbonization efforts, contributing not only to significant cost savings, but also to more sustainable and resilient humanitarian operations. So as for the most pressing needs, I think I will come back to that in the next questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Camilla. Yes, I think that was nice to hear about how the need for technical assistance, because many of the agencies don't have energy experts, don't have these type of people on the staff, and so NORCAP plays really a vital role, and I can attest to that, being a NORCAP expert at IOM myself. Over to Dominic, please go ahead.
Great, thanks Adam. Good morning everybody. Despite my title of Deputy Director of Finance, I don't really know much about finance at all. I manage the renewable energy projects, the fleet projects. I've got infrastructure under me, travel, asset management, that type of set of services. I'm particularly sort of engaged and enthusiastic about the renewable energy section of my portfolio, because we're really making good strides there. So just to give a broad brush on what UNHCR is doing vis-a-vis climate change, climate mitigation, we really have 3 pillars. I'm only responsible for one of those pillars. So the first pillar is all related to climate refugees. People are displaced through climate change, or when people are displaced, they enter areas which are very difficult to survive in, very difficult to set up agriculture or any sort of living condition or community in. So the biggest part of UNHCR relates to this piece. How do we, the relationship between refugees and climate. The second pillar that we work on is the operational side, operational greening. So this is more around the camps. So an example of that would be boreholes. We do a lot of work in boreholes, and previously we used a borehole would be drilled, and then we would use a generator to pump the water out of the borehole to provide it to the people. We've been solarizing this. It's called Project Flow. In terms of the progress, no, actually, I'll dig into that in a minute. Then the third pillar is which is the piece I'm responsible for, is the infrastructure part. So we have the largest fleet, vehicle fleet in the UN. We have around 7,000 vehicles. We have about 550 offices, our infrastructure component, and then of course there's travel. So we're producing between 50 and 55,000 metric tons of CO2 every year, simply with our own UNHCR footprint, and this is the piece that we're focusing on. In terms of our approach, I think we've got a great approach in the sense that we're very data-driven. Rather than having an idea or listening to a set of anecdotes about what's happening in the field. We're very much into measuring things, and Camilla mentioned the Green Box project. So we rolled out green boxes, which are basically electricity monitors to over 500 offices. And we now have a live dashboard that shows us exactly how many kilowatts per hour each office is using, whether it's a capital office or whether it's a border office. We can see live how many kilowatts they're using, and that helps us to build up a profile of the energy consumption and the seasonal variation or other variations, such as when people go on leave. So measurement and data is the absolute foundation, and we're really, really committed to that. And thank you for your support in allowing us to make that happen. And you mentioned some other pieces as well. With that data, we have a renewable energy team. They're all electrical engineers specializing in renewable energy. We send them to country offices. They do an energy audit. So they look at the data, the green box data. They look at the electricity bills. They look at the appliances. And they come up with a profile, and then they come up with a design for that office. And then we move that into the design and into the implementation phase. So in terms of what we've achieved, so for Project Flow, for example, Project Flow has been implemented. That's the solarized pumps for boreholes. That's been implemented in 29 countries. We've got 336 boreholes that are solarized, which is 51% of all the boreholes that UNHCR has created. The CO2 is approximately 18,500 metric tons of CO2, which has been reduced because of using these solarized pumps. And the monetary savings is approximately 56%, obviously. And again, we're generally pumping water within daylight hours because when the sun goes away, things change. Then you need batteries, etc. More specifically in my area, which is the green financing facility, which is the infrastructure piece. Last year, with the support of donors, which is the Norwegians, IKEA, gave us an enormous private sector donation a couple of years ago, the Swedish and the Germans. We've managed last year to solarize 11 operations. In fact, you mentioned many of the countries, Kenya, Uganda, Somalia, Nigeria, etc. This solarization for last year, 2024, is actually producing 2.8 megawatt peak of electricity, which is quite a lot, by UN standards and NGO standards. It's quite significant. And that it leads to $500,000 of savings using solar rather than diesel power generators. So that's 27% lower than what the country offices are paying today for their energy, and approximately 2,200 metric tons of CO2 is reduced by implementing that solarization. That was last year. This year, we're focusing on another 30 sites around the world. The estimated energy output is going to be 8.6 megawatt peak, which is, again, if you add those together, we're over 10 megawatt peak, which is really significant amount of power, and $1.2 million of savings, again, moving away from having to buy diesel and running generators and over to solarization. This will also push down the CO2 by 6,500 metric tons. What we always do when we go to country offices is we go in and we match. We say you're not going to pay any more than you currently pay. So if you pay this much right now for your power, we will ensure that the solarized solution is less. And you continue basically paying your monthly bills. We design the whole system around that. And then I also wanted to mention that the two other challenges that we have, I can get into the global financing facility in the next round perhaps, but the other two challenges we have is fleet. Again, the UN as a family has got around 25,000 vehicles, largely diesel, largely Toyota Land Cruisers, just pumping out CO2 and other particulates. So that's something we're working on as well. And then travel. Travel is the hardest thing to mitigate, to reduce, to offset, because people travel. So that we're struggling. We have a couple of policy changes to deal with that, but that's quite a challenging one. So in a nutshell, that is sort of broad brush UNHCR progress. Thanks.
That's quite a nutshell, Dominic. Thank you for that. Really great to hear about the progress being made this year, last year, and this year. Over to you, Julie, to hear about what NRC is doing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity of being here. So I'm Julie Gatien. I'm the Global Lead Climate and Environment, and we work as a team at global level, including a team dedicated on the reduction of our environmental and carbon footprint. This is an initiative we call Greening the Orange, so a little bit of plagiarism here, but you get the picture. So as part of this initiative, and I want to emphasize that the initial step was the carbon footprint report, because that gives us an understanding on where we could have quick wins without disrupting the delivery of humanitarian assistance to reduce our overall footprint. And that was the decarbonisation. So you mentioned the data and the information. Indeed, it's key, because then we can have informed decision on the next step to take. So what we did for these decarbonisation efforts, we first thought, look at the barriers to shift from diesel to solar. So colleagues in the field, in the country office, didn't really know where to start. So we created a solar handbook. This is a material that we are working for disseminating and improving collectively with other organizations. So the solar handbook is a step-by-step manual with tools and guidance. Then teams needed technical inputs, and we mentioned that there's no technical expertise on energy. So we worked with NORCAP through the deployment of energy experts under different models according to the needs, to the context, to the possibilities. And I must say that actually working with NORCAP offers that approach, that different kind of approach, which fits very well with the different needs, operational needs we can have from country offices. And then finally, what we noticed is that in country offices, project-related budgets, so projects that are funded by a donor, could integrate operating costs for the access to the operational energy, but they couldn't integrate the huge amount needed for the capital asset. So we created the capital fund, and that allows countries to spread over the cost into affordable payments back to us, to NRC. I think I'll get back to the capital fund of NRC later. So that was a real push, because the progress that we made, I think what could be the most visible in the organization today is that we had a clear, we won on the battle of the shifting to solar. The narrative is being embedded now into the organization from country level to regional level towards global level. The understanding is shared and agreed. We have also, the sentiment, and we see that country teams are very much mobilized around this shift from diesel to renewable, because it's good for staff, it's good for the environment, but also, just giving you a very practical example, it allows NRC to continue operations when there is a conflict, like what happened in Sudan. So our field office was able to continue delivering humanitarian assistance thanks to the solar systems installed. So in terms of figures, what we have been installing at the end of 2024 is 468 kilowatt peak, and that we aim to double that in 2025. Our objective is to continue the solarization of offices, but that can include capital branch, but also field offices and warehouses into 15 country offices. And so far, We have 617 kilowatt for a total of 24 sites that are in the pipelines for being solarized through our capital fund. And that's approximately 26 kilowatt per site of capacity. So what we need, I think this kind of opportunity is really useful for NRC and for our partners working with us into the solarization and beneficiating from these solarization efforts, is to share about the models, the challenge, and the capacities that we still need to continue the solarization effort, but also the wins that we had. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I think we see also a few themes emerging in this discussion. Both Dominic and Julie talked about the need for data to support the decision-making, to help to prioritize the opportunities. And a great example on Sudan about resilient operations. You know, solar can play a very important role, especially in the conflict areas where, you know, delivery of fuel becomes very challenging. So thank you for that. Over to Borja.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Good morning, everyone. I don't know if you are hearing me well.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you. Also, it's an honor for me to be here today. Unfortunately, not in person because, you know, in World Program, we are also going through this shock of funding, and travel has been cut dramatically. So it's anyway great to be part of this roundtable representing the organization. Going to the point, I think we have done a lot on decarbonization in the last few years in the World Food Program. Obviously, we benefit a lot from the efforts that were already in place in 2010, when a carbon tax was implemented in the organization with the purpose of decarbonization. I think we have been able to leverage that early movements quite a lot in the last few years. So the energy efficiency program is actually the flagship tool that the organization has to decarbonize operations. I have to say that what I'm hearing from the rest of the speakers is very similar in terms of the challenges and the vision that we have for decarbonization. I couldn't agree more with Dominic on the data, the importance of data in terms of selecting the projects that are the most interesting to decarbonize. Obviously, we are a bit behind of you, Dominic, in the implementation, but we are actually quite focused on installing energy meters and in actually the top CO2 emitting premises by the end of the year. And so that's an important effort that we are making in the organization. I will quickly mention what the EEP, or the Energy Efficiency Program, is in terms of how we are structuring our work. So the EEP provides grants to country offices up to 75% of the total project cost. So we keep this 25% ownership of the country office that they need to provide by themselves. And then we select project based on technical and other parameters. With that, we have been able to, actually in the last couple of years, to implement around 3 megawatts of solar capacity installed in country offices. In the number is around 20 country offices that we have been working lately. I think this program has been, I mentioned before, is now a recognized brand in the organization. People are looking at when we are launching the next call for application, and many different benefits has been connected to it. Like, for example, now it's more obvious that solarization makes economic sense. So we have seen some country office also doing their own projects without the support of the EEP, which is actually one of the main purpose of the EEP, is actually an innovative way for country office to look at these projects, but also has triggered some donor outreach, and we have been seeking some earmark funding for CO2 emissions savings projects. So lately, last year, we got a couple of millions from the Hyundai Motor Company, which has launched us to a different ambition level. And then I will also mention that one of the good things of this program is that we have flexible expenditure deadlines. So we are not tied on spending money on 1 year, or so we don't need to rush. We don't need to. We can actually focus on the projects that makes more sense. This is on the I would say what have been achieved, but of course a lot has to be done. We are looking at new carbon tax from commercial flights. They are almost ready. We are looking at partnering more and better, because a lot of challenges has been shared before. It's also common to us, but I guess we can comment on those a bit later in the conversation. Over for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Borja. So that was a great kind of overview that we heard from each of the panelists, and now we have some targeted questions for each of them. Maybe Camilla, you can start. From your experience, how do energy experts deployed by NORCAP help in equipping the local humanitarian teams with the skills and the resources to sustain these energy transitions over the long term? And what are the challenges and benefits that you see of this approach?
Great question, Adam. Thanks. Yes, so I think, we work across many different levels in NORCAP with regards to the support, but just to mention some practical elements with regards to the decarbonization in particular, I think, as Julie also mentioned, we do support in the development of tools, in the development of handbooks, in the development of action plans, etc., within our partner agencies. We also, support with the development of inspection checklists, maintenance and project handover guides of solar installations, for example. A lot of training, capacity building of the focal points in our partner agencies. That's very important. And also, the basic design considerations for the installations, but also guidance on operation and maintenance in very practical terms. I think I want to highlight just one example where we worked and supported UNICEF SARO in 2021 and supported the design of UNICEF's offline open source solar sizing tool, SunSavvy. So this tool has been very successfully developed and implemented also across many different countries, leading both to an uptake and also, improved quality of clean energy interventions in UNICEF's operations across both humanitarian and development settings. So more on the global level, and as you also mentioned, we're also supporting, the development of innovative financing solutions for decarbonization. So I think, just highlighting, the work through IOM, through UNHCR with regards to designing, and also NRC with regards to designing these innovative financing mechanisms to unlock, the decarbonization potential, I think is another level that we're supporting on. So it's quite a wide reach with regards to what we are actually doing. So yeah, we're supporting really across the entire value chain, from energy assessments to development of financing mechanisms for decarbonization. So to go into some of the challenges that we do experience, I I think one of the challenges with regards to sort of the long-term sustainability is really the high turnover of staff, especially with regards to the capacity building. When you have a very high turnover of staff, it's very hard to sort of institutionalize maybe that knowledge building that has been ongoing. So I think that is one of the challenges that leads to loss of institutional knowledge and also could, hinder a bit of progress. Across all our partners, we also see, this changing priorities of management might, divert or might slow progress at times. So it's another barrier that we're working to see how we can overcome. And also, we still observe, the lack of planning for operations and maintenance. Although it's a lot of new models coming in and we're seeing a lot of progress, but we're still seeing, some of that, lagging behind in several instances. But then on the positive side, we're also seeing, a lot of good progress. I think we're seeing a lot of increased efficiency compared to just a few years ago. So, by adopting a broader approach to the decarbonisation efforts and making targeted investments in initiatives, there's large-scale implementation and more efficiency gains happening as, we're growing and going from pilots to, really scaling the operations. And then we're also really seeing the wider adoption. I think, that out of our 50 energy experts out on assignment in 2024, 40 of those had decarbonisation as their highest priority, often working across many different projects or initiatives, but 40 out of 50 had decarb as the main priority. So I think that just demonstrates that it is a very, growing focus on this and a lot of traction within this. And then also just from an internal perspective, we also see, that we are also doing a lot more enhancing the capacity building. So knowledge sharing efforts have expanded substantially. So last year we had more than 80 capacity building sessions, reaching over 1,150 staff members of our partner agencies. So that is really positive, we believe, with regards to our internal knowledge sharing capacity building efforts. So, but I think just to go back to some of the challenges, and I do think, now with regards to the challenging context of the sector at the moment, I do think, the need for further capacity, further support, further strengthening may be required from Nordkapp's side to keep the momentum going forward as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Camilla. Yes, certainly technical capacity, human capacity is very needed. At the same time, the financial capacity is also very important. So with that, I'd like to turn to Dominic. You introduced the UNHCR's Green Finance Facility. We'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And please, if you could share some of the lessons learned regarding balancing between the cost effectiveness of this fund, of the approach, and actually achieving the decarbonization targets. Thanks, Dominic.
Great, thanks, Adam. Okay, so nothing happens without money. One of the standard approaches of giving a country office $1 million to solarize themselves and then ticking the box and walking away, I don't think that's particularly effective. It's definitely not sustainable. So I think what we've done, with the support of the donors and with some really great members of our team, is we've created quite an innovative, financially sustainable mechanism, which is called the Green Financing Facility. So basically, just very quickly to explain how we solarize buildings, we've got two models. Okay, so the first model is the power purchase agreement. So a power purchase agreement let's say you've got a remote site like Dadaab, for example, a power purchase agreement, you go to a company and say, hey, can you come to Dadaab and build a solar plant for us, and we'll be your client, and you give us green electricity and we'll pay you. And that's a great relationship made in heaven, and that will go on forever. And theoretically that could work, but then the company says, we'll do that, we'd love to have you as an anchor client, and you constantly consuming electricity from us, and we run the farm and we build the farm, we pay for the farm. But we got a bit of a concern about the risk, because you're the UN, you could get kicked out of the country, you could throw your privileges and immunities and just not pay us, you could scale up, you could scale down. So this is an enormous risk for us, and this is the middle of nowhere, so there's no alternative clients to go for. So this is the PPA model, and the solution for that, which I think has been discussed a lot, is a de-risking mechanism. So we have, the Swedish gave us $4 million to de-risk this. So now we go to the company, or we continue the conversation with the company, and we say, okay, fine, we understand your risks, but we've got $4 million in a pot, which is insurance money. And if any of the above happens, if we get kicked out, if we just don't want to use you anymore or something else, or we scale down significantly, we will pay you like an insurance claim, and we will cover the depreciated, your capital depreciation. You built your solar farm back in 2020. Now it was 10 million then, it was worth 2 million now. So we'll cover that. So that requires a lot of legal stuff, a lot of financial stuff, a lot of financial modeling, a lot of negotiation with private sector companies. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty good model, because a private sector company is doing all the work, making all the investment, and you're just somehow being a client in the middle of nowhere, getting green energy and having an insurance fund, which you hopefully don't need to use. So that's one of the models that we use, which is a great model. It has challenges, which I'll mention in a second. That's model number one. Model number two is what we call EPC, which is engineering procurement contracts. And that's basically what you would do at home. You get a solar, you basically profile your residence, you do solar panels, you get the batteries. Sometimes you do have to get generators, because we can never get fossil fuel component down to zero, but we can certainly reduce it significantly. So the second method is EPC. It's basically like solarizing your house, except we do it in a lot of countries around the world. How we are, I guess, innovative there is that we have a central pot of money, and we don't let the country offices sort of own anything. So we buy the solar panels, we buy the batteries, we sometimes buy generators, we buy the contractors to install it, and we have it installed there. And then we own that piece of equipment. So the solar facility, the solar panels that are sitting in Kakuma, for example, on our buildings, are owned by my team. So the benefit of that, and then the country office, basically, again, they just pay their utility bills. So previously they were paying, maybe for the national grid, they were paying generators, they were supplying fuel, and now we switch it over to, they just pay us that utility bill. So the good thing, obviously, with that model is we start off with an amount of money, we spend it all to solarize that building, and then over the next 5 to 10 years, through those monthly utility bills, the electricity bills they're paying to us, we refill the pot, so the pot's full again. And then in about 8 years' time, usually the batteries run out of life, because the battery is the most expensive and the shortest life component usually of a solar system. And then we at headquarters are like, okay, your batteries run out, but we've refilled the pot, so we're going to buy you a new battery and responsibly dispose of your old battery. So that's also, both of those models are sustainable. It requires one quite large, because it's really leasing in a sense. We're kind of leasing it to them. They're paying a leasing fee or utility fee. It's a large capital investment at the beginning, which obviously the donors have covered. But then it's financially sustainable, and it's operationally sustainable, because it replaces all the components over time as they run out. So these are the two innovative financial models that we use. The challenges that we face with this are fundamentally the power purchase agreements. We found through bitter experience that power purchase agreements work in larger sites. You need sort of 700,000 kilowatts or more for a company to be interested. If you're talking, we've got a lot of small offices, hundreds of small offices all around the world, and companies are not interested in that. It's just too small. There's no margin there, etc. So the PPAs, which we were very enthusiastic and hopeful about at the beginning, one by one kind of dropped off and are only really effective in very large and stable installations. So that was one important realization. The other important realization is that these companies that come in to do these installations are typically medium, maybe small size, maybe local. Even if you're dealing with a company in Germany, in reality, you're dealing with a bunch of people who are from Kenya or Uganda or Nigeria, etc. And with our procurement mechanism and with our upfront payment or lack of upfront payment, this really causes challenges. So the companies say, we need to buy $500,000 or $1 million of gear, of goods, but you're not going to pay us until we bought that, but we don't have enough money to buy that. So it's really it's a massive cash flow problem, and it's where UN finances don't necessarily work. So we haven't exactly solved that problem, but that is one of the big challenges. Yeah, I think fundamentally that I also want to say that it's critically important for countries to be on board with this, because they're frequently not on board when headquarters tells them to do something. They're like, nah, we're going to do our own thing. But if you come along with a pot of money, which is what we have through the innovative finance mechanism, they are more than willing, even in this climate. Over the last couple of days, we've got the rep in Somalia, the rep in Bangladesh, basically saying we want to freeze these projects. And then I call them and I say, I understand that we've been told to freeze, don't buy anything else, but this is tightly earmarked money. This isn't going to actually impact any of your expenditure. We're paying for this. It's all financed and pre-designed in a way. So this is actually one of the few things that has been future-proofed and one of the few things that can go forward and make a positive saving and a CO2 reduction. So I think it's great. We weren't expecting this financial crisis, but there's another positive thing about the sustainable finance, which is that you can survive that as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Dominic. That's really great. You've helped us to understand what the possibilities are with these two different approaches, and really the importance of finance and funding in this whole equation. So now I'd like to move on to Julie. Going further on this, on the topic of funding and capital, tell us more about the NRC Capital Fund and how does it enhance NRC's capacity to reinvest savings into humanitarian programs. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. And I was listening to you, Dominic, and I think it's great that we come after you just to compare into even the challenges that you have. So passing after you, I would say that for NRC, the model that applies for us right now for the solarization of office is the second one, the sort of EPC model you mentioned. You remember I mentioned that we have 26 kilowatt peak average per site, so it's much more. It's much smaller size for our systems. So, capital fund for NRC is also a large pot of money. This pot of money sits in NRC Norway. It means that we come with guarantees on the repayment of loans from potential investors, contributors, or donors, because we have banking guarantees attached to that pot of money. So that's a safety aspect for people who want to contribute or invest. So the capital fund purpose is to finance the solarization of our country offices and get in grants, but also zero interest loans. The structure is such that it allows to receive the loans and grants from partners and then lend out to each of the country offices that commits to solarize and use the capital to procure and install solar systems. So the difference here is that the system belongs to the country office then on site. The repayment of the loans are financed from the funding already provided to country offices, whereby the amount of repayment are equal to the depreciation of the installed base. So I was reading this sentence, so I'm going now to translate. It means that our country office get the capital that they need to kick off the solarization, this challenge that we mentioned. So they can get that amount of money, and then they will repay the same model as the green facility of UNHCR. They will repay according to the depreciation of the equipment. And that means savings for them. So I have a few figures actually that we collected. So for instance, in countries like Mali, where with the capital fund, their repayment costs are much lower than the costs they were paying before for diesel generator for all their operational energy needs. So basically running all daily operations. So for Mali, when repaying the capital fund for reimbursing the loan that we had given to them, it will be 25% only of their pre-solar energy consumption expenses. So it means 75% are saved and can be re-injected into aid and service delivery to displaced people. For Afghanistan, that would be 18%, so it's 82% of savings. Northeast Syria is 29%, so that's 71% of savings. In Yemen, we have an implementation completed in Aden office with the support of the capital fund, and their fuel costs have gone down by around $100 US per day. So that also means that we will quickly see some savings. So just to summarize, key points on the capital fund. To kick off the capital fund, let's be honest, we had also to use our own money. So NRC invested $3 million to launch the fund. The fund, the capital fund, will be blended with grants and zero interest loans from both private and public sector investors, as well as our reserve capital. Repayments are based on the depreciation cost of the installed base, and then will flow back into the fund and then enable NRC to reinvest in those other country offices who want to solarize their offices. NRC is guaranteeing the repayment of the zero interest loans. So that means that for a donor, instead of giving NRC $1 million to shift to renewable energy, you give us $1 million and then we shift twice or maybe more of systems into renewable energy because of the zero interest loan. It's not a grant, it's a zero interest loan, and then you get back your money. And we have solarized our country offices. So we actively call for investors, contributors, and donors, of course, to join the fund. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Julie. Now over to Borja. Borja mentioned previously about WFP's carbon tax, and obviously they have their own funding mechanisms in place as well. So Borja, what challenges and achievements have you observed in WFP's energy efficiency program? And if you were to start again from scratch, what would you do differently in designing both the fund components and the program itself?
Thank you, Adam. I think, well, I already mentioned some of the achievements, and I think it was just a natural consequence of having this program implemented in 2010. So it was really a bless to have actually this program for so long, accumulating some carbon tax and some experience. But of course, we have challenges, and we have to really ask ourselves what we do better. On the challenges, I mean, I'm going to probably echo what has been said. I think the technical capacity is still the one of the main challenges, and I think it's great to have NORCAP here that has been pivotal at supporting all the UN agencies and beyond to really decarbonize and also energy access. Traditionally, with World Food Program, NORCAP has been providing more on the energy access, but really we will be looking forward to engaging further in decarbonizing. I think technical capacity is an issue, and maybe focusing on that early on would have deliver better results. Then also another challenge that, well, really we cannot change or mitigate so much is about the geographical spread of World Food Program premises around the globe. We have more than 1,000 premises, actually closer to 1,500 premises, and they are really spread out, and they are usually medium-sized premises off grid in many occasions. So really difficult story because there is some noise here. I hope it is not bothering so much. And then obviously another implicit challenge of World Food Program is about the nature of the funding. It's a voluntary funding that we have been able to mitigate with this scheme of the EEP, or now it's called Decarbonisation account, where even external donors can support. And then, I mean, I'm sure that this is a common topic for all of the organizations, humanitarian organizations, is a rotational nature of some of the jobs out there in the field, management, also technical staff. They rotate, and sometimes we miss a little bit of the knowledge or the institutional memory to really go ahead with some of the projects. I think that's something that we need to also talk about. What I would do differently, what we would do differently is, of course, maybe strengthening or highlighting the economic value of decarbonization. And I think as in many other aspects, UNHCR are ahead of us, because Dominic, you say that it's despite what you have said about that you understand less on financial, but it's great to see that you are hitting something connected to finance so clearly. So it's also another signal that you are in the right way, and we are always inspired by your work. So I would say yes, maybe a more highlighting the economic value of decarbonization is not only environmental benefits, but also what we call in World Food Program duty of care for the staff. So actually they will breathe better air in our offices, less noise. So, but it's also this economic value that maybe we should highlight. And then maybe, again, a focus on partnerships. As I say, we are sometimes replicating efforts in the different agencies. We have found that partnering with UNDP actually is a partner that we are using quite a lot in the implementation of our projects. Is really helping us a lot. They have a dedicated team in Copenhagen that really supports other agencies. The GPA as well is known. I mean, he knows quite well of that, and I think that has a lot of potential still. And I would say partnering is really a field that we would like to grow. Yeah. Over.
Great, thanks so much, Borja. Just to be mindful of time, we have about 20 minutes left in the session, so we're going to just go around and do a pretty quick wrap-up from each panelist, but I encourage the audience, both in person and online, to think of your questions, and we'll get to you in a few moments. So if each panelist could just share some final reflections from our discussion today about what we've heard, and perhaps your call to action for the humanitarian sector on the decarbonization front. Camilla, over to you.
Great, thanks. No, it's been a very, very interesting discussion here today, I think. I do think, I mean, one of the things here to avoid the duplication of efforts, I do think, wider collaboration and, even wider knowledge sharing across different actors, I think is really, really important. So we avoid the duplication and we use resources efficiently. But I think also, it's many things have been mentioned here, but I think also the bundling, aspect to increase the size of the decarbonization projects, I think is a real key element that needs to be considered. And also, I think, bundling both decarbonization with the provision of access to be able to attract private sector participation to an even larger degree. But I also think, with regards to the collaboration, like, for example, from Nordkapp side, we just signed a new agreement with ICRC. We're starting our collaboration with them now. And I think we're really excited about that and continuing to expand our partnerships across the sector. So that's really great. Then I think with regards to the innovative finance models, I do think, we just need to continue refining and developing and expanding those innovative financing models that work and that, solve the bottlenecks in the financing, because I think that is a lot about what is hindering progress, is to make those innovative financing mechanisms that we heard about today and scale those. And I think, that's really our call to donors as well, to ensure that, there is funding coming to these innovative financing mechanisms that will then unlock large-scale decarbonization and private sector participation. Thank you.
Thanks, Camilla. Dominic?
Thank you. I think it's a really nice and rewarding area to work in because it's very tangible. You can measure everything. You can measure power, you can measure CO2, you can measure fuel. So it's really gratifying in that way, because there's many areas in the UN where you can't measure stuff and it's a little bit more grey, and I get frustrated in those areas personally. I think the key important things to focus on is leadership. First of all, you need your principals, your senior leaders to be committed to this, because this is basically how you get the communication and the traction with country offices to make this a priority. I mean, we make it a priority, but let's get it really clearly owned by leadership. That really helped me a lot. I think secondly, obviously the data, I mentioned the green box. We actually stole that name from WFP, so I'll hand you a compliment back there. They're great at that. So, and really that's marketing. You package it, you give it a cool name, and you talk about it as the green box rather than whatever else. So marketing is important, and naming things and is really key. And also business cases. Build a business case. I'm doing this all the time in fleet travel, all sorts of different areas. Build a business case. There's a lot of receptivity in the UN and, certainly with my bosses, to see a business case, and when it's very clear and there's savings to be made, they'll support it. The innovative financing, obviously, absolutely key. Having a very persistent team. We have Cleo Forster, who's my team leader. She is amazing, and we get so many things thrown at us at the country office level, with issues with suppliers, issues with batteries not clearing customs. It's a nightmare, and she just stoically deals with all of that. So you need very grounded, good logistics, practical people to make the thing happen. Of course, the collaboration, I mean, it's key. We are actually all rolling, you know, UNHCR was not the first to roll out the green box. It was probably about the fourth to roll the green box, but we went on steroids with it and we just rolled it out everywhere. But obviously, if you're sending an engineer or even an electrician to install green boxes, just do it in the whole country or do it in the whole capital of the country. You save so much money and everything goes online. So collaboration in many areas, including this, is key. And then, of course, donors drive this. You know, they're the engine because they fund all of this. So, you know, take your donor reporting seriously. Be very tangible, be very upfront. Tell them when you've gone off track. And we have gone off track multiple times. I mean, the IKEA donation, which was the largest single donation, you know, we were actually finishing the project and we have money left, which, you know, typically people don't like if you go over or under. But be very transparent every quarter, how things are going, what challenges you're facing, so that, you know, you're in that type of journey together. So I think from my side, these are the key things to help you move this process forward. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Dominic. Over to you, Julie. And yeah, just let's try to wrap up the session quickly. We still have closing remarks also from Kelly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much have been said. I just maybe insist on 2 points. I think organization can be confident into getting into the shifting of fuel-based energy towards renewable energy, you know, using these kind of examples. It's doable using capital funding. We have, you know, proven cases that that is doable and solutions can be found. However, we need donors on board still. This is not something that that can be done solely on the capital reserve of humanitarian organization as usual. And I must say that we need the commitments there, but also, you know, them embracing as well this kind of innovative finance mechanism, which is not necessarily the case with all traditional or institutional humanitarian donors. I want to highlight something as well. We talked about business case. I agree. Just let's you know, say that why is it working? Why is it advancing so well and has tangible results? It's not for the greater good. It's because of the savings that we do, and that is something in the, you know, in the case that we need to build, that we need to insist on and show again and again savings, and then re-injecting those savings into humanitarian aid. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Julie. And Borja, the final word to you.
Thank you. Actually, everything that I thought has been said, so I'm not going to repeat. Maybe inviting Dominic to share some of the leftovers of the funding from IKEA with us. No, but seriously, I think partnerships and maybe collective fundraising is also part of the potential further talks in really leveraging this decarbonization efforts. Bringing economies of scales, maybe co-sharing some of the efforts. I think it's great what you share, Dominic, on the PPA model. We're also doing it or trying to do it. So really sharing efforts, really sharing knowledge and even resources. So that could be a way to go. I will, for the sake of time, will stop here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Borja. We're going to move quickly to a Q&A. And again, if you have a question, you can raise your hand or yes, go ahead, Julia.
Hi, thank you, everyone. It's Julia Cabo from FAO, Corporate Environmental Officer. I have a million questions, so I hope that there will be a bit of time after the session to just talk to all of you. But I have one. So talking about the savings, I understand that it's, of course, very important. We're also, I mean, way ahead in the journey of solarization of our offices with more than 500 kilowatt peak installed and more than 15 sites with solar systems. We got $1 million capital funds from FAO last year granted, but we also are struggling in spending this money, and for several reasons. So I would really like to talk about the challenges, how you overcame these challenges. But my question is, the offices you have in the field, let's say, do they really use so much diesel generators and so little grid, for example? Because for us, many sites that were, of course, for example, aiming at business continuity, so trying to have solar systems and hybrid systems also for that reason, they are linked to the grid. They pay a little tariff for the grid, and the return of investment was too long or not even profitable, and our budget expert, let's say, they refused to allocate these funds to this kind of sites because it wasn't profitable, but there were many factors not included into this assessment. It was purely financial and purely savings related. So this is a question I have because we, for example, sites where they are in countries where there is hydropower. So hydropower have it costs very, very little, the electricity. And indeed, it could not be interesting into solarizing those sites because, of course, the emission factors is low. But due to droughts and climate change, hydropower is providing, a lot of disruption right now. So maybe they're going to rely on diesel generators. But this is in the future. So as of now, they're not interesting sites where to spend money. So we are not spending money in those. And this is a point. And also sites, in our case, sometimes, offices might, close or move, and during our journey, which takes time, and this is another question, sorry, then I close, about the timeline of how long is a typical timeline for you to install these systems, because for us it takes more than a year, sometimes 2 years, and over this time, the situation changed, geopolitical context changed, so we face sometimes where ready to go, and then something happens, and then the project is stopped. And the money, what do we do with the money? we are facing this kind of challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Julie, a very interesting question about deploying the capital. I don't know, Dominic, do you have some thoughts about this?
Yeah. I think site selection is really important. You're right. If you go to Wikipedia, and you look at, renewable energy countries, all the rest of it, it's amazing. You've got Kenya, you've got Ethiopia, you've got DRC. They're all green, and they've got a significant portion of their national grid is green because of the hydroelectric. But the problem is the grids are very concentrated around areas where people live. And a lot of the places that's the first problem. A lot of the places we operate, you don't have transmission lines that go there. And transmission lines are extremely expensive to build, so your business case falls apart immediately. The second point is the grids are not super stable sometimes, so you get blackouts, brownouts, all sorts of different variations. So you have to typically get a battery to store all that good green energy and then pass it on. So we I think, came up with 5 or 6 different criteria to prioritize offices, and we identified 20, not countries, but offices. The biggest one being Beirut. Our office in Beirut is the biggest CO2 producer. And we used, do they have a generator? How much they're spending on fuel? Do they have a national grid? Is it green? Is it stable? Do they want to do this? So we came up with the whole criteria. And with those 20 offices, we're covering about 80% of our CO2 emissions. So you have to prioritize, and that is all based on data and information. And then, spending money is difficult. It's 1 year is quite a short period if you're talking about, cradle to grave kind of thing where you start measuring, because you want to measure over a period of time to see what the average kilowatt per hour consumption is. And then you need to go through procurement, get contracts. We've got long-term agreements or frame agreements in place with suppliers. Then you negotiate with the suppliers. When you do this project, you need procurement on board. I fund a procurement resource full-time. I also fund a legal resource full-time because there's all these hoops you've got to jump through to make this thing happen. There's countries that have monopolies. They have legislation saying you can't just build a solar power, etc. So it is difficult. I think 1 year is actually a very short period of time to do that. For your house, yes, but not for a country office. It would be about 2 years, I'd say, on average.
Thanks very much. Any other questions from the audience here? If not, we will jump to some online questions, please.
Yes, we have a question from Nora, please.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Let me turn the video.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thanks so much to the panel. Really interesting session. Lots of insights for us to take home. A question on maintenance. We hear a lot from our country offices that this is a real struggle, and maintaining the panels also in the face of staff turnover, short projects, what you have mentioned. How are you handling this? Are you building maintenance into your contracts, or are staff being trained to do this? Thank you.
Great question. Talking to the sustainability of the systems, is there anybody that has some good insight here?
Yeah, so service and maintenance are also costs that can be included into the capital fund coverage. So that's one thing. Then the second thing is that indeed we have capacity building, preliminary and ongoing capacity building efforts that goes with the solarization. Again, I will then look at Camila, because this is done by our NORCAP deployed colleagues, energy advisor within NRC, who did a great job. So yes, and I must say that it's also included into the market analysis that they do before the selection of the system and the procurement of the system. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Maybe another question from online or from the room, if anybody has. Do we have any more online questions?
Yeah, there is one. For Julie, how will the private sector be interested to provide credit to be repaid at zero interest rate?
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, corporate responsibility, that's one first. The other thing is that we are actually exploring, impact investors in that regard. But I would say that it's really a matter of organizational commitment and organizational strategy that can fit with what we actually do. So to be honest and straightforward again, we are not going to be, the ways to compensate some greenhouse gases emissions, because I mentioned the kilowatt peak that we obtain. We are talking about small systems, so this is not it. But this is more about, like I was saying, impact investments, social impact investments that is related to the core mandate of NRC.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. I think we'll take maybe from the online community.
We have one, Andy called. Yeah.
Hi all. I'm not sure if you're hearing or seeing me.
We can hear you, Andy. Go ahead.
Great. Okay. Yeah, thanks all. Andy here from WFP. I work with Borja and our environmental sustainability team. Relates a little bit to what Dominic was saying on the power purchase agreements, and congratulations to Dominic and team there for the work that they've done on trying to forge ahead, albeit with some challenges, as you've discussed. But particularly now where we're facing financial constraints as organizations, that PPA model where we don't require the upfront costs is an area that I think that we can and should pursue. But how can we do that collectively? Dominic, you mentioned scale, and we need big projects to make it financially viable and interesting for suppliers to come in. And then all of us on the panel, those online as well, how can we combine efforts or create a larger demand collectively so that we encourage that interest from the private sector? Over.
That sounds like a question for GPA.
Mark, any comments? Or don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, we do see it as a strong opportunity, and it is something we are working with partners and donors to push forward. And we're really keen to learn from the experience of other partners to pick up the baton and run. I think first movers always run into brick walls. So thank you, UNHCR, for running into our brick walls. We look forward to WFP continuing that journey. Hopefully the walls are thinner. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and we are working with partners to see how that we can achieve that going forward. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's a great note to kind of conclude the panel, but and thank you very much for all the very interesting questions. I think it's been a really great discussion, so I'd like to thank the panelists. But before we wrap up, one last thing. I would like to invite Charles Kelly, who is the Global Shelter Cluster Environment Community of Practice lead, to come up to the podium. And Charles has been listening to all of this. We're very curious about his perspective and how he reflects on this discussion. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks a lot. By the way, for those of you who know me, my last name is Kelly, and that's the name everybody calls me by. So Charles, people use that name, I'm in trouble for some reason.
Oh, sorry, Charles. Okay, so Kelly.
Maybe in trouble already. Okay, so just some quick things, a very interesting set of presentations. So I'd like to thank Mark, Adam, Camilla, Dominic, Julie, Burka, and Sylvie for all the presentations that they've made. And so we give them a round of applause right now. Thanks. I did that so I won't forget to do that before we end. So trying to summarize all of this, it's a very intense thing, and I hope ChatGPT is going to do a good job of summarizing it really well for me, or for you all, but there's some things that I think are important to touch on. One of the things that Sylvia said to start with was leaving a positive legacy. And I think that's a good conceptualization of what we're trying to do here. It's not so much how much one has done in terms of solarizing, how many buildings or those, but are we leaving something? Because our job is to go in and assist people and then leave. We're not supposed to be there forever. And what do we leave after? And there's a lot of discussion about that. How do we maintain sustainability and things like that? So I think that's a good point to start with. By the way, there are a lot of numbers thrown out. I don't know if anybody kept any tab of that. $108 million saved, I think, at some point. 400 million people who would be considered electricity poor. And that's a very significant number. It's not just who we're assisting, but it's a much bigger population out there. 11,000 generators. I don't know what they did with the 11,000 generators. I guess that's a question. Did you recycle them or something like that? But that's the next thing. So numbers, really good numbers, and that's impressive to people who are potential donors. And those numbers need to get out there, and they need to be reinforced. Let me see if what else. One other theme was de-risking. So de-risking for the organization actually putting in the installation, de-risking for the financiers, and to a certain degree, de-risking for the people who are receiving the assistance, so that there's a legacy that's positive. It doesn't fail the day that the organization ends. So de-risking is important. NORCAP seems to be very key to this process, providing technical support. Congratulations, keep the work up. Another thing was mentioned, I think, by Dominic, leadership, getting the people upstairs to accept to do stuff and push for doing things, but also persistence. And sometimes those two things, you know, somebody years ago on environmental things, somebody told me, well, you just keep squeaking and eventually they'll do something about it. And that persistence may be also very important. We may be getting to the cusp of doing good things there. The whole financial models thing, it seems that there's good experience with that, things that can be transferred. And then sharing information and sharing experiences. And I've seen this working in Afghanistan and some other countries on environmental issues, is that we have one organization solarizing. As a matter of fact, I saw one installation where the main operation was all solar and one of the UN agency compounds was not solared. And nobody can explain that. But there just seem to be gaps in terms of sharing and doing things like that. So I think that's an important point moving forward. A couple other challenges now, though, just to finalize things. One of which is we talked a lot about, or you talked a lot about, desolarizing or solarizing, decarbonizing offices. And our obligation, our humanitarian obligations go further than that. And so I think that's the next meeting next year, a couple of years, we need to talk about how this has made a difference in people's lives, the people who are affected. Similarly, we have different types of operations. We have protracted conflicts. If you're in a country for 15 years, it's much easier probably to do the solar thing than if you're in a situation where it's transitioning to a recovery after an earthquake or something like that. But we shouldn't ignore one situation because the other one may be easier or more convenient to look at. And then finally, I think there's an issue about equity here. And I raised that because we're looking at the Global Shelter Cluster Green Team is looking at localization. How do we localize environmental capacity? And that may be planting trees, as somebody thinks, hiring a local NGO to plant trees. But what it is also is making sure they know their carbon footprint, that they've gotten rid of their generators if possible, et cetera, et cetera. And so working at the international agency level may actually have been the easy part. I mean, it's been hard, but that may actually be the easy part. And the next question is for our localized, our national NGOs, our local organizations, how do we move the same process down to their level? So thank you very much. This was a really good, interesting and good presentation. I'm sorry I sort of ended with some more challenges for you all, but I think this is a process that's moving forward. We've made success, and I look forward to great news in the future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you to all the panelists again. Thank you very much.